And Trump was told that you better prevail upon Netanyahu not to go through with this, because if you do, there will be hell to pay. And even Trump understood that this was a bridge too far, and he prevailed upon Netanyahu to stand down. Omanis and Qataris were involved as well, and that's what happened. And so far, the funeral procession has proceeded without, even though they have been talking about it. I'm greatly privileged today to invite to our new channel Danny Haiphong. Danny Haiphong is someone I have admired for a very long time, and I it will not be too much to say that I was inspired in creating this channel called Transition Protocol because of the work that I saw that Danny Haiphong was doing. Uh, I have a day job, as most of you know. I am a director of a major fintech company that I have been doing for a long time, but I was given an opportunity to have access to some information that is privileged, which is very relevant to what is going on in the world right now, which I believe is causing a tectonic shift in the power structure that has existed to date. And I am delighted to invite Danny Haiphong to provide me with his perspective. Danny, you might, just for your knowledge, uh, you were probably, you are definitely not born when I heard the word Haiphong. I was, I was
No, not yet.
a student at Berkeley, 1966, and this Haiphong was a word used almost every single day. And unfortunately, as we now know, to spread a lot of lies, a lot of propaganda that had nothing to do with the truth. And there were some very courageous people like Daniel Ellsberg, etc., who punctured those lies. And then we finally got to know what was going on. So I am trying to play a very, very small part in that type of enterprise that you have already been doing for a long time. And I'm so happy to see that you're so successful at it. So I had an opportunity earlier today to meet with the co-founders of this channel called Transition Protocol with Pepe Escobar, my colleagues Pepe Escobar and Larry Johnson, and we broke some news in that session, which just ended about an hour ago. It will soon be out, in which we provided a lot of new information that we were privileged to know that I have shared with Danny. So rather than repeat that information, I would invite Danny to comment on that. So go ahead,
Yeah,
Danny.
right. Yeah, well, I'm humbled by the introduction, Zulfiqar. Thanks so much for inviting me. And yes, there is, as you said, a major tectonic shift in geopolitics underway, in global politics. We've been covering it on the channel. I've been covering it on the channel with regard to the Iran war and what now this process of this memorandum of understanding leading into the cementation of Iran's victory really means for the world. And it appears, yeah, that this privileged information that you received, you passed on to me, definitely indicates that there is a massive role that Pakistan is playing in defending Iran's capabilities of, as you have said on this program, Larry and Pepe have covered, eradicating and defeating this kill chain, because Israel and I believe in large part the United States as well. I think the United States often tries to pose as a mediator, but I believe both of them have, and Trump has not been so quiet about this. They have aims and plans. They would like to, if they could, eliminate essentially the entirety of Iranian leadership. I believe even just hours ago, Donald Trump said that he was willing to essentially eliminate all of Iran's infrastructure if a deal isn't made. And so there are real security concerns that go with this process that Iran is engaging in. And it appears that Pakistan is providing a defense architecture that allows Iranian leadership to defend itself even better. And this, of course, is backed by China. And this should come as no surprise because I've had our mutual friend Pepe Escobar on the show to cover developments like the China Pakistan economic corridor. this deep relationship that China and Pakistan has built. It's really historic. It even dates back to the Cold War, where there was a split between the Soviet Union support for India and China's support for Pakistan. But nonetheless, this relationship has endured all kinds of weather, and now it is developed into such a burgeoning and a very fruitful economic relationship that I have always argued that China's economic development process, its capabilities of building these really robust relationships with everyone, will have political and geopolitical ramifications, not the ones that we're used to. It's not pulling strings behind, it's not puppeteering and installing puppets that are good for you. Rather, it's through that cooperation allows opportunities for mutual cooperation, even in defense. And so, if there is a favor, for example, that China and Pakistan can broker each other on behalf of Iran, it can be done. It appears that's actually what is happening, according to this information you provided, that there is deep involvement of Pakistan's defense ministry in helping ensure that these talks go smoothly and that they lead to what the region really wants. I mean, the region across the board is incredibly hungry for an end to this war, because if it does not end and if it continues, it's not going to lead to Iran's military defeat. It's not going to lead to Iran's regime change or collapse or any of that. What it will lead to is further instability in the Gulf, and maybe regime change across the region, because none of these countries will be able to provide for the people. And they've already really hurt themselves, especially the Gulf monarchies, in aligning with the United States in the way that they have, which essentially gives cover to Israel, which has already been exposed, especially in the cases of countries like the UAE, which hosted Israeli military personnel and conducted strikes on Iran during the war, in conjunction with Israel and the United States. So all of this is to say is that, yeah, there is an emerging role. Pakistan as a mediator has meant a lot more than simply behind the scenes diplomatic work. It has also meant that this big relationship that covers economic, military, and political spaces has given Iran much more room to breathe, and a literal break. I believe, I don't have inside information on this, but I truly do believe that Israel, in certain elements of the U.S. Regime, wanted to conduct a strike on this massive funeral that is happening, in Tehran, and where 10 million plus people have participated in it. I believe that there was hope that there could be some way to strike terror further into the Iranian people's minds, as if that would work for some reason, but it didn't happen. And I think the reason why Trump keeps, despite even these little flare ups that have occurred over the last couple months, keeps trying to stay on this path of the MOU is because, one, the U.S. needs a pause, but two, yeah, there are these bigger geopolitical ramifications. The U.S. could find itself with very few friends in the region, if not zero friends other than Israel, and that could spell disaster. So this is all, I think, a really big deal, in the sense that we are seeing how multipolarity, we're seeing how countries like China or Iran in this war, and now Pakistan playing a kind of middle role, how all of these countries, because of the relative weakness and decline of the United States, and because of the worsening image of Israel around the world, and how there is such disdain for Israel in the region, that this gives a country like Pakistan so much more room to be a much more forceful player, especially in this realm. And it benefits Pakistan quite well, because not only does it get to continue working on mending what has been a very up and down relationship with Iran over the years, but it gives Pakistan even more credence to its best friend, economically in particular, China, which can only benefit Pakistan in the long run. So it's a very big deal, and I'm very curious to see how it all plays out.
Well, thank you for that further explanation, Danny. Because I was privileged with the news, and I had access to the news, which allowed me to relay it earlier to our common friends Pepe and Larry, and now to you. let me add a certain level of detail that perhaps would be useful to our global audiences. Uh, Pakistan became aware of a plot to assassinate Mojtaba Khamenei uh, as the procession planning was being done. It had not even begun. And Pakistan had learned about this plot through its military intelligence. It shared it with the Iranians. And together with the Iranians, they decided that they were going to utilize first the ability to inform Israel through Qatar, Oman, and the White House that we know of your plot. This was an operational plot in full detail that was uncovered by the Pakistani military intelligence because it had learned how to intercept their kill chain, their AI assisted kill chain, which we reported earlier on this channel, before with Pepe and Larry. So Trump was informed about this, and Trump was told that you better prevail upon Netanyahu not to go through with this, because if you do, there will be hell to pay. And even Trump understood that this was a bridge too far, and he prevailed upon Netanyahu to stand down. Omanis and Qataris were involved as well, and that's what happened. And so far, the funeral procession has proceeded even though they have been talking about it, the Israelis have done nothing. Now, that really impressed the Iranians. There was a major delegation that went from Pakistan to Iran to take part in the funeral procession. Asim Munir, the Field Marshal, was there, who is the head of the military. The prime minister was there, a person that we do not much talk about in these channels, but we should. His name is Mohsin Naqvi. The reason why this guy is important is because one of his relatives is the head of the Shia community, which is a sect of Islam that is practiced in Iran, 40 million strong in Pakistan. It is highly respected. This guy is highly respected in the clerical circles. So they were there, and they had multiple meetings with Arakchi, the foreign minister, with Pezeshkian, with IRGC, and through them, through to Mojtaba Khamenei. And the message was that Pakistan can provide the security that Qatar is not capable of to provide. Please understand, our audiences, that on July 2, there was a meeting supposed to take place July 2 in Qatar. Iranians did not attend. So Pakistan said to these leadership that we are capable of providing the security. We already demonstrated that, and they deployed what is called their special security group within the Pakistani military. These are very, very advanced uh, and highly trained people. They compete internationally, and they always rank near the top. They said we are prepared to provide them. And Iran, interestingly, said, "Okay, if you are going to escort us, just look at the details of that. They needed an escort, a military escort to Islamabad and protection while they are in Islamabad. We are willing to give this a chance." Now, all of this was going on with the blessing of China. Pakistani Deputy Prime Minister Isaac Dar, Foreign Minister, was in constant contact with Dani while all of this was going on. So China was blessing it, Russia was blessing it. Through foreign Field Marshal Munir, Trump was contacted and said, "Well, this is your last chance to get this thing done with dignity. You want to get out? This is this is an off ramp to get off with dignity." So MOU process has been reignited, even though it was comatose. July 11th is the date in Islamabad, and Iran will be represented by their top leadership. United States is expected to be represented by the top leadership, and there is every expectation the MOU process will be revived. Now, this is a really, really big news. Danny, I'll leave it up to you to explain to our audiences why this is such big news.
Well, it's big news because I think it signifies the actually existing reality which the United States and Israel, their regimes, have tried to deny for uh, so many months now, which is that, as you said in the deliberations that have occurred, there is a big message that there's no real dignified way of getting out of this for the United States in particular, but the least undignified way of getting out of this is by engaging in this process. And even if the United States, which I do not believe it is, or capable of doing, which is even if the United States doesn't engage in this in good faith, eventually the actually existing reality that we see on the ground will compel the US in some shape or form to concede to what Iran is asking for. Maybe Iran doesn't get everything that it wants in a final deal, but nonetheless, if and when there is a final deal, it will have to include terms that are favorable to Iran. Truthfully, even just a cessation of hostilities is favorable to Iran because, unlike in other cases where maybe in June 2025, when there was a ceasefire with Israel after the 12-day war, and there were a lot of concerns of, oh, okay, well, you're allowing the U.S., you're allowing especially Israel to build up again, to strike again. This is not the same. We have now learned about Iran's military capabilities, how robust they are, and how capable they are, and continue to build them up from here on out. I mean, there have been countries in the world, a la the DPRK, which have spent their entire lives as independent nations building up militarily in preparation for, or and even in the case of North Korea, for war. Technically, there is no peace deal, or there is no treaty that says the U.S. and North Korea are not at war. So, nevertheless, this is something that can only favor Iran up until the point where it becomes increasingly clear that the United States and Israel just have no capacity to engage in such a deliberation. The MOU, a real second phase of these talks leading to a permanent deal, it really is a trap for the United States. The United States can't keep on doing this. It has too many limitations militarily. It cannot maintain active major wars all around the world without huge impact on its particular stockpiles, air defenses, JASSMs, these standoff munitions, and the like. And not only this, but if the war happens again and there is no end in sight, for example, then the global economy will teeter and eventually fall into a major depression, one that I do not believe the world has really seen because even during the Vietnam War era, which you referenced earlier in regards to my last name, my pseudonym, um, even during that period, there were fears of economic crisis because of the Vietnam War. It never really got there. It did things did get worse, and then eventually there was the oil crisis not too long later. But this is far different in the sense that we have not seen a war cause such major economic calamity. And that means the United States, as this hegemon, will have to deal with the massive pressures of an economic depression and the fact that it has the no capacity to get out of a military conflict it can't win. That leads to a massive crisis of legitimacy, and it will have huge impact on the U.S.'s geopolitical standing. So this is why, and I've never believed that the Trump administration and Donald Trump himself could handle such a scenario. Really, no U.S. president can handle that situation. But Donald Trump himself is particularly ill equipped for this because, well, the reason why Trump is president is not because he's a massively popular person, but it's because he has been riding in on the sinking ship of this U.S. hegemon. That there's political chaos, there's internal divisions, there's a society coming apart, and there's of course an economy that most view around the world as as a terrorist actor. So this is the reality facing the United States, and so the MOU process, continuing on. Unlike what many people on social media are fearing, where they fear, oh well, Iran is what if is Iran going to capitulate? Is Iran surrendering? I've heard this so many times. Is Iran losing its leverage? I've seen all of these arguments. They don't really amount to anything because they don't take into account why this MOU process is has come into being and why it has turned out that every attempt by the United States to rip it up has not led to that. Israel and the United States have tried to rip it up multiple times now. They can't seem to do it because in the end of the at the end of the day, I think the Trump administration understands that if it flirts with the crisis that it is on the brink of, well, it will have political ramifications that the Epstein class, as our friends Mohammed Marandi and Larry Johnson and others have used, they will be very concerned about their own legitimacy. They need to hide. They don't want to be out in the open, but this war will bring them out in the open if it is allowed to have this global, impact, in permanency with no pause and no capacity to even partially rectify it. I don't believe the consequences of this war are actually rectifiable, but a pause, a breather, any time for the United States in this Epstein class to reflect on the issues in front of them, I think is one that they're really actually trying to get because they know that if they don't, they won't have an opportunity for war next. And then Iran on the other side knows all of this. They know that this is the ultimate plan. The plan is not to ensure Iran gets what it wants. It's not to ensure Iran becomes stronger. That is just a consequence of U.S. Israeli actions. But because Iran understands this, they are going to continue to prepare and continue to be ready for the next war. And the regional situation will likely fall more and more in their favor, contrary to what maybe developments in Lebanon are saying at this moment. The truth is I think the broad scope of the developments of this war really show that the axis of resistance has gotten stronger, it's gotten more legitimate, and it's shown itself far more prepared for far more people and nations and leaders and those who matter in the world to see, and it will impact decision making. I think it's a large reason why this culmination, we were talking about Pakistan, like this culmination of Pakistan's role in all of this is really about decades of this war on terror. The US tried to use Pakistan as a war on terror conduit. All of that is kind of blown back in its face. The US has tried to use India as a weapon against China. That's backfired with relation to Pakistan. But the broader reality is that a country like Pakistan, regardless of its leadership over the years, has only strengthened relations with China and moved further and further from the US because that is what the true pattern of the world, the future of the world, really portends. That's what the crystal ball is saying to most leaders. It's just a matter of how much space and how much room do you have to maneuver in order to get out of it. And right now, Iran has opened up a lot more room.
Well, Danny, very well put, and I will add a little bit more to it because I happen to have the privileged information that I'm happy to share. All while this was going on, the Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan, who is also the Foreign Minister, was in constant contact with Wang Yi, and he was blessing every single move. So who comes out at the top at the end of all this? I mean, we all know that this is going to end. We all know that the United States is not going to prevail. There is no way. And what will be the power structure for that region, and by extension for the rest of the world, would be the hand of China. But thankfully, China is not interested in being a hegemon. We have seen that as well. China is interested in promoting trade. China is interested in developing infrastructure. China is interested in helping the local population grow stronger, etc., 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 and not inserting its own will. So this is a very important detail that we need to provide to our audiences, as well as the fact that this incident has punctured the myth making of Mossad. And Israel and Mossad is more of a Hollywood production than reality. I had Alex Krainer on my show a couple of days ago, and he said that Israel and Mossad have failed just as much as they have succeeded, but there is a Hollywood myth making going on that says, well, they are invincible. Well,
Yeah.
we have seen that they are not invincible. We have seen that Pakistan uh, has disrupted that kill chain before, after the last assassination that they did in Iran, and they were able to identify their plot to disrupt and cause havoc in the existing funeral procession. So their myth making has to end, and it has to be put where it needs to go, which is that it is just a Hollywood production. They are not going to be able to do what they have been able to do. So I know you don't have too much more time, Danny. You have to go to your show again. But I would like you to comment on how the world is going to look like once this is all over. This is going to be over. And there is no question about that. I mean, I can say that from everything that I know, that I am privileged to know, that if not tomorrow, then day after tomorrow, there will be a resolution. There will be an MOU. Trump has been told that this is his only way out. One very, very positive thing about all of this is that he has begun to listen to Field Marshal Munir of Pakistan and begun to pay attention to him as to these matters. So, and Asim Munir has been in his ear saying, Mr. Trump, you want to get out with dignity, here is a chance. And it is our belief that he's going to take the chance, and he's going to negotiate, and he's going to get out. Now, once he gets out, Danny, you know this area as well as anybody. What do you think is going to happen to the American bases over there? What do you think is going to happen to their influence with the vassal states, which will no longer feel the necessity to become a vassal state? And and the geopolitical nature of this entire uh, massive Eurasian landmass.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have about 10 more minutes, so we can speak for another 10.
Okay, good.
I will say, in terms of your question, I want to first make a comment about the Mossad Hollywood myth making and its invincibility. I think what Iran has exposed, and I think what this whole process has exposed, is exactly that, but in the concrete sense that I think a lot of people during the June 2025 war, because of the way it started, believed that Mossad and U.S. intelligence, perhaps in coordination, had just such a strong foothold in Iran. And then what we found out is that not only did after that war did Iran tighten things up so much so that a very significant proxy war right before the February 28th strikes that lasted for several months, where so-called rioters, really armed, I believe they were more like armed mercenaries, were wreaking havoc inside of Iran and killing civilians, attempting to create the conditions for regime change. That was taken out with a very, very, very sophisticated operation, which ultimately led to the seizing of Starlink devices and the elimination. I believe that Iran has actually eliminated any kind of potential force inside of the country that could act as a go-between. Because the point here, I believe, is that Mossad, in order to be truly successful, in order for it to, when we say successful, we're in order to really uh, uh, accomplish its terroristic activities that it does through so-called intelligence operations, for example, like the pager attacks, it needs a very strong, willing accomplice, meaning that, for example, the Lebanese government or whatever we want to call that, maybe a particular portion of the population which is disgruntled by, let's say, Iran's independent fervor and its seeking of independent development. Maybe, we have the Barzanis of the world, the Kurdish faction in Iraq, and that does the bidding of Mossad in the United States. Like these types of forces. The problem is these forces are increasingly becoming less legitimate, and Iran has become far more effective at quashing them. Actually, even up until this day, Iran, despite the war being in this pause phase, being in the MOU phase, has been striking at various Kurdish militant factions that may be organizing, and the U.S. and Israel may be using to try to eventually cause some kind of armed insurrection of some sort. So it is, I believe, a huge lesson now in the world that Mossad, in order for Mossad to truly be able to operate and conduct its operations in a way that are quote unquote effective, to do something like a pager attack, to do something like kill Iranian scientists, it needs willing accomplices. Iran has learned a deep lesson in this, has tightened things up quite dramatically, and has the backing of the majority. Now we know 90+% of the population back the government now. There is something called blowback, and the political blowback to Israel's actions, both overtly and its intelligence operations, have caused a significant amount of blowback. Now, I mean, look at the relationship between China and Israel. People criticize all the time. They say, "Why does China have relations with Israel?" They haven't ever been worse. And Netanyahu can't set foot in the country. Like this is because China cannot trust Israel with anything. We know that Netanyahu had intelligence operatives bugging the White House, for example, in order to conduct spy ops. So this is par for the course, and you need willing accomplices, or Israel and its Mossad needs willing accomplices to get what it needs to get done. In terms of what the world will look like after the conflict in Iran is over, well, I believe we could call this a round of the Iran war because, in a sense, Iran will have scored a victory and we will see Iran manage the Strait of Hormuz, maybe jointly with Oman, maybe not. I think so. I do believe that Muscat and the government there, regardless of its attempt to walk a tightrope because of its relations with Washington, will want to manage its side of the strait for its own benefit in cooperation with Iran. I don't see how a fee structure would not benefit it. So, all in all, I believe we'll see Iran with control of the strait. We will see Iran rebuild. We will see in the region. I believe we will continue to see, especially Saudi Arabia, and now I believe Qatar. I mean, Pakistan, I believe, always has. It's a long-standing trend, as I said before, for Pakistan to move further and further away from the U.S. orbit, particularly on the most important sides of it, economic and military. Um, I think that will continue. But Qatar, Saudi Arabia, for example, maybe even, I mean, we know that the UAE and MBZ and that government is so deeply indebted to Washington. It has begged Washington to do its bidding on certain conflicts and wars and all of this for years now, whether it's Yemen and otherwise. But um, I don't see how the UAE, with the news that it is trying to seek stronger economic ties with Iran, how the UAE could maintain this posture in the long term. But I think Saudi Arabia, Qatar, because of its horrific gas situation, because of Saudi Arabia's anger at Washington in a lot of ways, because it has tried to wage war with Iran at the expense of Saudi's key role as a energy exporter. Yeah, all of that is going to lead to further tensions. Trump was supposed to be the guy. Remember, everyone should remember this. Trump was supposed to be the guy that accomplished the Abraham Accords. He was supposed to cement those on behalf of Israel. He was supposed to be the one to get all of the Gulf countries to shake hands with Netanyahu and say, "Yes, we are all together. We normalize you, and we are going to reject Iran. We're going to do everything that the U.S. and Israel want now. But because of this war, the exact opposite has occurred. Now, these Gulf countries are going to have to tread very lightly. I don't trust their leaders per se. I mean, it's quite clear that the very history of a lot of these Gulf monarchies is a byproduct of British and French carving and colonial carving, and then the U.S.'s intelligence and other kinds of manipulation after that fact. But there is something called self-interest. At the end of the day, in order for these countries to maintain their particular kind of political and economic rule, they will have to draw certain kinds of red lines, and those red lines will ultimately mean that their relations with Washington will, at the very least, have to be diversified and therefore weakened. And so, in terms of the bases and the infrastructure, now that's a whole different. That's a whole can of worms because on the one hand, the U.S. military state, the Pentagon, Washington, it wants to funnel some part of this $1.5 trillion money printing scheme for the military industrial complex back to the bases, but these bases have been so damaged and the amount of time, right? But in the United States, you know this, Zulfiqar, the way that capital at this stage works is, and you're in the West Coast, so you know that you see new properties go up all of the time, I'm sure, or attempt to go up all the time. But the problem is that uh, a lot of times the amount of capital it takes to actually complete a project ends up being, how should we say, undesirable to the very investors who made that happen. So uh, at the end of the day, that's why a lot of things go very slowly in the United States. This is why the U.S. produces certain kinds of weapons, very sparingly, and this is why stockpiles get drained so fast. Is because these corporations, they want to make profits, so they are not trying to take big risks at this moment with the capital that they are willing to give up in order to produce these weapons. So they are pinching every penny they can, and I believe that will happen with this military infrastructure. I believe that the United States will try to slowly withdraw from the region. It will try to bring. We already hear some reports that there were special operations, JSOC. There was a JSOC team that was given the job of stealing supposedly the enriched uranium, and they were going to rely on Israeli intel for that. That didn't happen, of course, because it would have been a suicide mission. Literally, this is what the report says: is that they were briefed that they were probably all going to die, and then it was nixed, and they've just been hanging out in some area close to the Persian Gulf ever since, and now some of them are going home. And I believe that process could be probably where the whole of the assets that were damaged by Iran, that's probably where it's going to go. We already have reports from the Wall Street Journal saying that maybe the U.S. military will try to build some underground infrastructure. Maybe they'll try to build these kind of mobile runways where they don't have to keep a large amount of forces, personnel, and other resources in one place for a very long time. The fact that they're talking about that seems to me to indicate that, you're not going to get a whole lot of construction being done, for example, at Al Udeid to fix those THAAD radars, for example. Those are probably gone. So like I think that's where it's going, and that will have big ramifications, I believe, for the way the U.S. can attack Iran again, which leads to your point that this war being over in a sense, and that no, I think the U.S. will and Israel will of course want to be aggressive toward Iran, will want to weaken Iran, and they don't want to see Iran exist as it is. But the options that they have to be able to accomplish that will be so diminished that what they can do will likely not be effective, and therefore we may be seeing the end to the U.S.'s capacity to do exactly what it did on February 28th, which would then effectively be the end of the war. And the impact of that means that Iran gets much stronger, as I said. And I believe geopolitically, it's a huge victory for multipolarity. A lot of people have been very pessimistic about the multipolar world of late. When they saw Syria fall, when they saw the Gaza genocide, when they saw the Hezbollah ceasefire, the Lebanon ceasefire in 2024, for example, there was a lot of pessimism. Ukraine has gone on and on and on, and that leads to the opportunity for manipulation of the narrative. Um, yeah, we have just witnessed a war where you can't really manipulate the narrative. So much so that the mainstream media has to sound like us sometimes, and and now they are going crazy because of the realization that everything they were saying up to the end of the war, now that the war has ended, they're trying to spin this as like a partisan thing. Oh, Trump being weak. The truth is if Biden had won and was in there, and his oil advisor already said that they would have gone to war, would have been the same thing. It just would have looked a little different, maybe. Maybe Biden would have said things differently, but the same process would have happened, and the same defeat would have happened. So this is not partisan. This is kind of what it is, and yeah, the multipolar world, I believe, has won a huge victory. The strength of these three pillars, China, Russia, and Iran, continues to grow, and that's the
Don't
biggest
forget Pakistan.
win there. Yeah, yeah, Pakistan. Yeah, well, Pakistan will definitely be, a player that will continue to rise as well. And this is true for a lot of, and I think we'll see. I think the more that we see these developments happen, the more that countries like Pakistan will emerge. I think we'll see more and more of this, and hopefully that leads to some room
That's excellent
for
analysis,
more.
Danny. I
Yeah.
could not have done it better. Uh, very, very, very good analysis. And you shall not hear this on mainstream media for at least a week. Maybe not, maybe longer. But in any case, Danny, I'm so delighted to have had you on this program
Yeah,
and
same.
so appreciate your analysis. And I hope that we can do this again.
Hmm. Yeah,
and
I will
and
look forward to it.
and I second everything that you just said. What you have said confirms and reaffirms everything that I know, and a lot of the things that I know come from sources that are close to the action, from people who sit at the table. So you are actually saying what it is that they say to me in private conversations, and this is the way things are happening in this world, our dear folks, and you hear it from us, you hear it from Danny Haiphong, and we will keep you informed, and we will give you information that is not varnished, that is not manipulated, that is not shredded of its meaning, and it will be ahead of everybody else. So this is Transition Protocol. Danny Haiphong has his own show, highly rated, highly regarded, and I'm delighted to have had him here. So thank you very much for listening. Please hit the subscribe and like buttons so that we can keep bringing this to you. Thank you, Danny. Thank you very much. I'm grateful. I'm going to
Thank you
hit the
so much.
stop button, just leave it on for a second so that it uploads.